We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And we are coming at you for the second day in a row, but this time to cover the back 4 episodes of Wonder Man. Yesterday you saw our reactions to 1 through 4. Now we have seen the whole series, so we are going to primarily focus on 5 through 8, but, may sprinkle in a little bit of thoughts on the full narrative as a whole here as well. Because we have so much to talk about, I'm going to toss it over to Kate right now so that we can get things started.
I really liked this show. I think it was different than anything we've ever gotten from Marvel before, and for that, I appreciate that. I think, we've kind of followed a formula, not just in the movies, but also in the shows, and they're superhero movies at the end of the day, guys. I mean, I understand they're going to follow a specific formula to a degree. I understand that that's just kind of the nature of it. I mean, every action movie tends to do the same thing. Like, it's just, it's predetermined.
Yeah.
But I will say I really appreciate that the show went a different direction. Now, the only gripe I have, which is not the show's fault, but I just want to be transparent about as we get into this episode, is we had to stop each episode for us to do our reactions that we have been posting on social media. So you can go ahead and check those out. Those are episode by episode reactions. And then we had to stop at episode 4 to record our last night episode, which you would see as a previous episode to this one. And so we were kind of forced to stop, think, and assess the episode before we could just binge it like 90% of the rest of the world just did. And so I would say it's not as good to me binging. Or not binging, I should say. But I would say if I had the opportunity, and I would, to go back and binge it, I would actually I think I'd enjoy it even more just to watch it all the way through rather than having to assess episode by episode. But I really liked it. I like that it broke from the mold. I like that it actually told a lot more of a story of a coming of age story and a story of friendship than it did of anything else. I think it might have been my episode 6 reactions, which isn't up yet, but will be by the time you guys are seeing this. I even talked about, I was like, I don't even know if we're gonna have a final battle. Cause who are we battling? Who's the antagonist? Who are we fighting? And so I kind of was wondering, timing wise, are we going to have time to wrap this up? I don't really know what we need time for at this point. I was I don't know where this story's going, but I liked it because the show itself put a bow on the show. It didn't do what everything else doesn't follow the formula. It told a cohesive story from episode 1 to episode 8 and put a nice bow on itself. It was the present. We didn't need to think about anything else, which I appreciated.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of good stuff in this show. I like what you were saying about, the idea of like wanting to go back and actually binge it, because I actually feel like the way this show is crafted, it was crafted for the binge. Like some of the
Yeah.
other shows, like I'm thinking of Daredevil specifically, like that is crafted for a weekly release. Every end of episode like has a very clear like cliffhanger, and you can
Yeah.
tell like they wanted you to like stew on it for a week before you like got into the next one. Whereas like this one, I think it could have been like I think each episode was roughly between 35 and 45 minutes. So it would have been, let's say, a 3-hour film. It could have been about a 3-hour movie the way it was told, well, with the exception of episode 4, because that was just a little bit of a break in the middle. But otherwise, it told one kind of cohesive story all the way through versus like breaking it up and having like narrative arcs within each episode almost. So I
Yeah.
definitely agree. I think, there is almost with Marvel, like, I don't know if stigma is the right word, but there's like kind of like a little side eye when shows are dropped all at once. Sometimes I think it gets this rap that like, oh, the studio's not confident in it because they're not taking the time to do the weekly release. But I think for this one, especially, like that turns it on the head, because you can see that they made the decision on the release schedule based on the type of show it was and the style of storytelling
Yeah.
versus like whatever has caused them to do or to make that decision in the past. So I just wanted to point that out too, because I think it was very much like a stylistic choice to do it the way that they did and then release it the way that they did as well. But yeah, I mean, I think to your point, it's a very like self-contained story that really is interesting within the genre, because it's like Simon isn't a superhero. He still isn't a superhero, even at the
Yeah.
end. But you're learning about him. It's kind of like you're watching like a regular TV show where the guy happens to have superpowers and it's the thing that he hates the most about himself. Like usually they're
Yes.
so like front and center, and they're so, this is the whole story about how he got them, how he lost them, how he fights the battle. Like we went through this in the predictions. But here it's like, no. The real story here is Simon Williams is just living his life, and it just happens that his, superpowers complicate them a little bit, but you really don't even see him use them all that much until even episode 8, which was cool, because then you could tell he had been kind of honing them. It was like, actually, as much as I have to keep these a secret, they can kind of be an asset because I can use them to like help me and my friends, which I think is cool, and hopefully is like a foreshadowing for him getting on some other radars now that he's very firmly on the DODC radar. And now that he has a little bit of like practice actually using his powers, it could be cool to see him use them with some other people who may or may not have powers, or just like could have special titles.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I actually have to say, the way this ended, I am pretty content if he stays by himself. And that might be a hot take, and that's not where Taylor is at, and I know that. But
did you see it in my face?
Yeah, your face literally dropped, and I'm glad this is a video episode, because now you like everybody can witness that you can literally see her face drop. I do like Simon. I think the thing is if they were going to team him up with other people, I needed that to kind of start to happen by the end of this show, and because it didn't, I don't think he yet belongs being brought in anywhere. I think we need to establish him as Wonder Man, the literal Wonder Man, not the movie Wonder Man. And we didn't do that in this show. And that's okay. That's fine. I like the story the way it was told. But it was almost a prequel to a Wonder Man movie itself, in which case he does tell the story of the hero, and he's coming to terms with his powers, and there's a bad guy, and he does what he has to do, and he fights him, and he beats him, and he does that whole thing. And then he has like that superhero aha moment, right? That to me, we didn't have. And again, we didn't need it. But I feel like we need that in order to have him join anybody else. I feel like right now he makes sense by himself because we did not wrap him in anywhere. And yes, you have the DODC. Yes, I mean, okay, I'm gonna look everybody in the eye since you could see me and tell you, I will not be shocked if we never see this come to fruition ever again, and we never talk about the DODC and Wonder Man. I would not be shocked, because that is the direction, sadly enough, Marvel has been going, where this wasn't even an end credit, but like it was just enough to have sat there and been like, they are never going to pick up on this story. We are never going to see this happen. And because of that, I just would prefer if we just kind of let him and Trevor go into their next endeavor, whatever that looks like, but let it be his I'm a superhero moment. And then I think he's ready to team up with other people. But because we didn't do that in the show, again, not a problem. I was good with it as is. I just like the thought of him just appearing in like Doomsday Now makes me literally like, ooh. Like, I don't like it.
I have so many thoughts to that. I'll start off by saying, like, I'm not going to lie. When I saw, so, you know, like you get into the title card and everything, and then they do Marvel Television, and then they went Marvel Spotlight. My skin crawled because how many times I can only, they've done Marvel Spotlight only once or twice before. One notable example, because I think she was the first, was Echo. Where the heck is Echo? So, like, to me, the Marvel Spotlight banner is like their signifier of have fun with this character for 8 episodes. You'll never see them again. And I, like, from episode 1 was like, oh no. And then to your point, I think honestly, my biggest qualm with the whole show is that he never did get that moment to like have any sort of step into the next thing. And I think, yes, you can say he kind of raised the stakes by going at the DODC and going for Trevor. And I don't, this is coming from a purely like MCU fan perspective. Like, I wanted there to be a little bit more towards the end. Once we had the premiere. Okay, now we've broken out Trevor. Like, I wanted there to be, this is setting up Wonder Man for the next thing. Because when they don't have clear steps like that, that's where characters get lost. And I really would hate to see this particular character get lost. I think I had liked, I talked yesterday in the episode about, if you reframe it and just say it's a good TV show and he happens to have superpowers, and that's how you have to think about it. Don't think about all of the, tie-ins to the MCU and things like that. That's fine. But I still was waiting for it to do it at the end because we needed those next steps for Simon. And to your point, now it's like, we can't just like cold open him to these people in Doomsday.
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to work. It would be really cheap to do it in an end credit that's not related to his property. I just, like, they have kind of put him on an island. He is now so self-contained that, like, you're going to have to really do some real kind of bending backwards to get him at this point connected with others in order to be in some of these important films that are coming up. So that is like my big thing is like, I was fine with, keeping it separate, but I needed something at the end more than what you gave me, because it gave me nothing.
Well, let me say this though, and this, I feel like this is probably an important piece. There's a lot of rumors going around that there's talk at Marvel about possibly making Wonder Man a mutant.
Yeah.
Yes, I said my favorite M word because I think that's really important to kind of bring up into this conversation, because knowing that the mutant saga is coming next, I think if that's the direction they go, I don't have that concern at all. I don't have an ounce of that concern, because save him. Be like, we don't really need you in Doomsday. We don't really need you in Secret Wars. It's okay. We have a million other characters we have to focus on anyway. Save him. Let him and Trevor go on whatever adventures they want. Buddy cop the way out of California. I don't care. I will watch them look at each other and breathe in the same room. They are that level of funny to me. I think in one of my reactions, I literally compared them to Bucky and Sam. Like, I was like, please, for the love of God, I will watch these two paint a room. Like, I don't care. So just like let them do their thing. Honestly, give me a cute little funny buddy cop moment into something else. Have him kind of be a little bit more into his powers, as you pointed out. You could tell he's been working on them. He's been honing in on them. Give me some more of that. Let me see him. Give him his first bad guy, whoever that is. I don't know. But then, like, hey, if you want to go the mutant route, I'm not mad. We already clearly are not going the way that he went in the comics. And we said that in the predictions episode. What are the chances Zemo's going to be responsible for this? Not likely, because our Zemo is nowhere near the Zemo that was in the comics to a certain regard. So honestly, if you kind of wipe that off in that way, and they did, he pretty much was like, I've always had these abilities. I don't know where they come from, like all this stuff. Cool, sounds like a mutant gene to me. If
Yeah.
that's what you want to do. And then again, like, you can leave him off the board for now, and that's fine. And I would rather you do that than shove him in somewhere that he doesn't belong.
I mean, I think that's fine, and I agree. Him going the mutant route makes sense, especially given like the way he described his powers and things like that. You know, as a child, so I'm not opposed to that. I guess where I'm like just nervous is like that's not confirmed, so we don't know that that's the route they're going to take the character. I will say, like in defense of that particular choice, if they make it, like he is a huge mutant defender in the comics. He's obviously not a mutant, that we know how he gets his powers, but he is a big advocate for them. So if they want to make that he's not just an ally of the mutant community but a member of the mutant community, I think, you know, he has a lot of the values or similar values to them. So that's not necessarily a hard pivot to make for the character. But again, it's just like, for me, it's, you know, we don't have that confirmed. And I think there is a little bit of like, if you're thinking about how things are releasing, like releasing him now in the multiverse saga when we're gonna get into mutants just feels a little premature, only because it's like random. Like, you did Ms. Marvel because you were getting her ready for the Marvels and she's a mutant, and that worked because it didn't feel like you forced it into a place it didn't belong. Even when you think about Namor, right? Like, he's canonically, you know, a mutant in the comics, but he's also very tied to Wakanda. So like that makes sense. And it wasn't forced. But then when you get to this, it's like, because it's so self-contained, it's like you chose this very self-contained project to release before the mutant saga, and then you're going to tie him into the mutants. That to me is where I get a little bit stuck, because I'm like, that just feels a little random. And I get that like the soft reboot means the world is going to look different, so the things that they filmed in this show may not be like, the references they've made may not be accurate anymore once you get to a post Secret Wars world. So I get it, but like at the same time, it's like, okay, well, you introduce this character, now we're gonna have to wait. If they break up Secret Wars into two parts, like we talked about them potentially doing, that could end up being, you know, 2.5, 3, 4 years down the road. It's like, well, at that point, like, it's not like you needed other things. Other things weren't dependent on Wonder Man coming out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but also I don't know. I kind of am just thinking about phases 1 through 3 and how, and then even 4 through 6 now, and not everything being dependent on it feeding into the big bad, and whether that's a good thing or not. I guess I don't care, almost like, I timing wise, like, I'm like, you know what, I got to just enjoy a really nice fun show, and I hope he comes in the mutant saga, and that's fine if that doesn't happen for another 2 years. That's cool with me. I'm all right with that. But I liked watching this show, and like, I guess, friends, you're very quickly learning who the type A and type B sister are.
But I also
before.
I also want to point out, this goes back to my deep-rooted distrust of Marvel, because if they don't capitalize on like moving something forward within a year or two, they tend to forget it exists. I'm looking at like Mordo, Harry Styles. I mean, how many of these things?
I forgot about that. That just brought.
I don't know why.
Out of me,
I don't know
so
why
hard.
Star Fox. Maybe it's because we've been trying for tickets all week, but like Star Fox was like right there. But
you said Harry Styles, and I was like, I don't know what's going on right now.
But I say all that to say, like, the longer that they don't pay off on some of these, the lower and lower percentage of confidence that I have that they are going to ever do that. And that's where I get concerned, because I'm like, the longer he sits on the shelf, maybe he never comes back, and I would hate to see that, because I want to see him be Wonder Man.
I don't believe they'd do that at this point, not with there being the possibility of him being a mutant. I think the point of that conversation and the rumors of those conversations being made and being had, I should say, are because they're wondering how they can fit him in better. And so,
I hope so.
Yeah, but here's the other thing. Like, listen, I enjoyed it. I know you're gonna come at me for this a little bit. It's, to me, a little bit like Werewolf by Night. I enjoyed watching it. I know. I enjoyed
Leave it
watching it.
alone.
I've not once been like, I miss those characters, you know?
Well, you and I are different people.
I understand that, but like, I don't feel that way. I'm just like, that was fun to watch. And every once in a while, it is nice to have almost its own palate cleanser of like, yeah, this belongs in the MCU, but like, I don't need to overthink it.
You know what it is, truly? I think that I was just like, and this is just me and like my where I am in my perception of things right now. I just don't think I'm in the mood for a palate cleanser.
I mean, that's fair. I'm not going to say it's not, but I kind of was. It was a really nice way to get us into this year of Marvel, especially because everything is so Doomsday related. All we're talking about is Doomsday. And honestly, I'm kind of like, it's nice to have just watched a show and enjoyed it.
Yeah, I guess like for me.
Okay,
well,
let's just level set and say we're never gonna agree.
I didn't get to finish my full thought because someone in the house is changing the batteries of a smoke alarm. So if y'all can hear that,
I did hear that, but I wasn't.
It was extremely distracting. So I was trying to decide: are the batteries being changed, or did someone like burn something in the microwave? So that was why, like, that was not a full thought. That was why I had a face there. Like, I was just there were things going on in the environment that were taking my attention away. But what I was trying to say is I just think where we are in the culminating piece, right? In the we're heading towards those culminating pieces. Yeah. I personally, and this is just my where I am, so it's okay if others don't feel the same way. I am laser focused on that. And I want most of the things I'm watching to in some way either introduce someone who's going to be in that or, you know, further that storyline, bring me closer, whatever that might be. And I think we knew going into Wonder Man that it was going to be separate. And this is not, you know, a ding on the show. It's just like in the timing that it's coming out, I myself as a viewer am very focused on other things. And I just was like, maybe a different time, I feel like I could have like really like sunk my teeth into it more. But right now I'm just like, hey, I really need things that are gonna like propel me there. And that's kind of where I am. Doesn't mean it's a bad show. It's just like kind of where I am as a viewer.
Which is fair. I'm going to level set us and say we're not going to agree in that opinion. Personally, I enjoyed the show as the show. I will say I was a little bit at the end like, are we going to wrap this into anything? Only because when we went to the DODC, I was like looking at the cells and everything. I was trying to be like,
when they like mentioned it's either a congressperson or a senator, I turned on my closed caption so I could see who that was. I actually didn't look it up, but the name didn't ring any bells. Congressperson Brea. I was like, oh, because I was like, oh, maybe it's Congressperson Barnes, and I was like, maybe, but no, it was not him. Or like maybe it was like a senator, somebody that we knew, but that name didn't ring any bells to me. But yeah, I was
like eyeing those cells. Like just because I was like, all right, like we've never been I mean, we have been in the DODC compound before. Not that one. Because the one in She-Hulk did not look like that. So whatever we were in when we saw Abomination and stuff, not the same one. But you know,
I think it was the same facility though.
But it didn't look anything like it. Also, I don't remember it being in the middle of nowhere.
I don't know,
I'm pretty sure it wasn't in the middle of nowhere because we see her outside of the DODC because she obviously is held there at one point. She's walking out.
I don't remember. I personally just will not be making any definitive comments about how much real estate the DODC holds when I haven't watched She-Hulk or Ms. Marvel in years.
Okay, fair. Either way, I do think I want to talk about the DODC because they have been a reoccurring annoyance for us in all of 4 through, I almost said 1 through 3. Nope, 4 through 6. And the thing is like, they just kind of always suck.
Yeah.
And not only just that, but like, this was the first time we saw they're not taking wins. Like, they are consistently taking L's. So My question now with the DODC is like, how much further do they go when they were already making budget cuts? They were already having all this stuff happen. They apparently had a win when they arrest the Mandarin, which like, that was crazy, guys. In the year of
Yeah.
2026, I was like, what is going on?
Well, and then I was like, my overthinking brain was like, he's still using the 10 rings like symbol, and we like know what that means now. Shang-Chi's sister
Yeah.
is in charge of it. Like that
Maybe
has
that's the link.
maybe, I mean, that was a whole mind trip in and of itself, because I was like, the fact that like, and well, and also like the fact that Trevor knows what that symbol means. Like he is
Yes.
intimately aware of like what that is.
Yeah. But obviously the DODC had their big moment, their big huzzah, and then like Simon went and took that from them too. So I'm kind of just starting to sit here and I'm like, what really is the future of the DODC? Because at this point, I feel like the way the show was going, I was expecting them to be more of a force, like how we saw them in Miss Marvel. Like they really are annoying. They really have the capabilities of ruining someone's life and
Yeah.
like really screwing up people who have special abilities and just really messing with them. So like I think going into this show and even at the beginning, you're kind of like, oh, this is like a very real threat. But then, like, as you're hearing that this department is literally like essentially falling apart, and they literally, and what is it? They need to get cells filled. Like, that's what they kept
Yeah.
saying. Oh, it's a filled cell, like, whatever. Like, what is the future of the DODC truly at this point in the MCU?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's interesting that you point that out, that like they have kind of been on the decline, right? Because I think the first time that they truly present themselves as a threat and not just like the cleanup crew after the Avengers is No Way Home. And they are
Yeah.
literally taking, you know, teenagers into custody. They are, you know, interviewing them and interrogating them very harshly, and they seem like legit. Even
Yeah.
to your point in Captain Marvel, like their surveillance capabilities and the things that they're able to do, they seem like your typical sus government body that is spying on, you know, the enhanced community or just regular citizens.
Yeah.
And you know, then you get into She-Hulk and it's like, okay, well, they're not quite, to my memory, they're not quite as present in terms like they're not out in force the same way that they are, especially in Captain or Ms. Marvel. But over time, they just have become less and less formidable as a foe. And to the point where now we're seeing the inner workings for probably some of the first time.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that they're getting, you know, budget cuts and all these things. It's almost like I feel like Marvel's way of sunsetting them as a entity that we need to be concerned about. Like now their supposed supermax prison isn't impenetrable. I mean, how were they holding enhanced individuals? Like, did they have ways to dampen the powers? Because Simon walked in there with his and was like, bzz, bzz, camera, let me take off this, like, you know, cell, let me just like fly out. Like anybody who has a physical, or even if you're like able to mind control, whatever, like enhancement, you're not gonna be like stopped by a regular cell. So I say all this to say, like, they have just kind of lost credibility, and you know, they anybody finds out that there's this breakout, they're gonna lose more funding. So I just think that Marvel's kind of saying like, all right, they were a problem, but now they're not going to be. And if you think about the soft, I'm going to keep going to this potential soft reboot. Like, do I think they're going to bring back the DODC in the soft reboot? No, probably not.
Well, and here's my thing is they've strayed so far, in my opinion, from what they were like meant to be.
Yeah.
So even when we see them early on, like they literally, guys, let's just like play with the words for a second. Literally the Department of Damage Control. Hey, so when do we do damage control? After something happens.
Yeah.
The point of them has never been to stop the threat before it happens. So not the Department of like pre-damage control. Like it's literally like their point is to be the cleanup crew after the fact and get it all, you know, whatever. As we saw in the first Spider-Man in Homecoming. I think we also ended up during the replay seeing that they were in one of the Iron Mans, or at least mentioned in one of the Iron Mans. Like they've been mentioned before, but again, damage control, not out here apprehending enhanced individuals that inherently aren't doing anything. And like their whole thing during this series was, well, Simon's a threat. Simon could be a big threat, all this stuff. And it's like, yes, but you can't really arrest somebody for what they could do. With that mentality, you could arrest me today for the possibility of me doing any crime ever, because that is literally what that is. Like, obviously, am I going to commit a crime? No, not really in my plans personally.
Just to clarify,
I don't plan to. But like, again, that is, with that mentality, that is, you could essentially take anybody off the street and be like, you could commit a crime tomorrow, therefore you're a threat. And like, that doesn't really work either. So with that like shifting mentality, they already didn't inherently make sense as a department. But now they make even less sense, because it seems to be that their only job is to be apprehending these individuals, because that's why they're experiencing the budget cuts. That's why they're being screwed as a department. And it's like, hey, maybe if you just went back to your roots. Listen, we got plenty of people trash in New York City. You're good. You job security. Don't worry. So just go back to what you were doing before. I guess I'm also trying to understand why they felt the need to shift the mission, if you will, of this department, because in doing so, I feel like you did make them a weird threat that didn't quite make sense. And also, as you were saying, like, it makes more sense to sunset them at this point, because what are they doing?
Well, the one thing I will say that could be a future for the DODC, and this kind of wraps into like your whole question about why they potentially changed the goal of their mission, is, you know, a change in leadership, right? So like, we know that at one point they were under shield and they were doing that. Then we know that it was a joint venture between Stark and the government, and now it just seems to be pretty much the government, since there is no Tony Stark. And I think that's where things really start. And not that Tony Stark was a perfect person by any means, but I think that's where things started to really go wrong. I would like to understand like who is actually the head of the department, because that's where things started to kind of like take a left. But in terms of their future, there is a line that Agent Cleary says that I think is very important, and he says it over shots of Simon using his powers. Is when they discover that Simon basically can control ionic energy, and you actually pointed out the first half of the line where he says Simon Williams could be a major threat or a major asset.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that could give some clue into where the department might be going. It could be that all these budget cuts, whatever, make them maybe sunset as an official department, but then these people who genuinely believe in the cause will go and like off the books put together, you know, a team of well, I guess they'll think they're heroes, but if they're working for the DODC, that's a little gray. Enhanced individuals, because they're collecting them as a team, right? Like, are they collecting them as adversaries to the Avengers, help for the Avengers? Like, why are they trying to, you know, the way I'm imagining it is like putting people in this position of, if you're not with us, you're against us. If you don't work with us, we'll put you in this cell. What is the purpose of that collection of assets, if you will?
Well, it is weird.
That's where I see the future of them.
Yeah, but that is weird, because like the new Avengers are government owned.
Right.
So it's like, we don't really need a government owned team, because we have a government owned team.
I mean, technically, so is Sam's. The president of the United States asked him personally to put together that team. So you have two government sanctioned Avengers teams. But that's why I want to, like,
the previous president of the United States. Let's not forget.
Yeah. Well, now the previous president is sitting in the raft. So, the one thing I did have a question though about, or what? Let me rephrase. The thing I think is the biggest question right now about the DODC is who's in charge, because I think that says a lot about where they're going and what their ultimate goal is. And I think the budget cuts, whatever. I think that's a lot of just like bureaucracy. They're not whoever this leader is, whoever's in charge, is not winning arguments for more funding, but that's just going to make them more let me put it this way, less likely to follow the rules, as we saw with Cleary and the way he was, squeezing Trevor. And also, like, more likely that when that funding officially runs out, because people have lost their belief in them because they truly have no credibility at this point, then they're going to go off the books, I think. And I think that's why it's so important to understand who the leader is. And I think that's why they're not really, like, this is the first property where we've seen anybody above Cleary, to my knowledge. So, like, we're slowly working our way up the chain, but I want to understand who is that ultimate person in charge.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I mean, at the end of the day, going back to the point you made earlier, I'm not sure if they're really... Let me walk this back. Because I am thinking about the X-Men, like I do. And I'm thinking about, as one does, they bring such joy to me. Let me wrap that back into my brain. Okay. As I'm thinking about the X-Men, and I'm thinking about everything I've ever been taught about the X-Men, the government doesn't always like the mutants, as we know.
Right.
I do wonder if the DODC is an asset in that way. Because I also think if you are considering the possibility that they might make Wonder Man a mutant, that's a very interesting property to have had them in, to be kind of losing control of their department in. And if we're thinking they could be going off kilter,
are you trying to insinuate that the leader of the DODC right now is Bolivar Trask?
I mean, I'm just saying it's pretty interesting if you think about the direction some of the mutant stuff's gonna go.
Yeah, because it's Peter Dinklage's character in the newer trilogy, but that's the...
Oh my god, I totally forgot that trilogy existed.
Well, only because I like those Sentinels in that trilogy are so scary because they take Mystique's DNA and they're able to, transform the same way she is. Y'all, this dry weather is not doing well. I'm so sorry.
Lives.
So sorry. I believe that's Trask, right? Who then is, because the joke is that, he's the creator of the Hunger Games and the Sentinels, Peter Dinklage, his characters.
Right. So that's why my point just being, even if they don't inherently go that far up, obviously, like, the Sentinels are literally a government program from the jump. Obviously, anybody who's watched even just like the X-Men cartoon, the Sentinels are as bad as Sinister, right? Like, we're out here just popping up and you're like, how are they still alive? Like, who keeps rebooting these guys? Like, it definitely goes a little off kilter, but they are initially government mandated. They're created to get mutants. They want to put the mutants all on their list, in their database, all that crap. This is government. And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, well, the DODC to me makes the most sense because, hey, let's go back to our words, right? Like, let's just think about semantics. Damage control. Well, when there's a mutant outbreak, because there's going to have to be kind of a mutant outbreak, where in order for us to like tell it properly and to like establish, we will have to shake up what we're aware of, and mutants are going to just have to become like the norm. Like, this is what's going to have to happen compared to where we are now. Who is a great department to bring in when literally things go out of control and the entire, like, guys, if you watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., think about what happened with them. And when the Terrigen all went into the fish and everybody started who is Inhuman?
Yes.
Okay. It's been a little while. Everybody who's Inhuman starts breaking out and like all of their stuff is being triggered. Think about this fact with the X gene, that the gene that is within all of the mutants that gets triggered, that gets activated for all of them. However they're going to tell this story, regardless, hey, that was traumatizing. Like, for everybody involved. Like, those who became Inhumans and those who are just living life and suddenly their next door neighbor just exploded their house. Like, damage control. And I see that being a segue for the DODC to continue in the mutant saga, but also to be a little bit more important than I think they are now, because the mutants also tell a story. Yes, there are people who like the X-Men. There are plenty of people who don't. I
Yeah.
think the MCU has always had rose-colored or rose-tinted glasses when we're looking at Avengers. We very rarely hear stories about people being like, the Avengers suck. They threw my car. Like, that was my new car. What the heck? Like, we don't hear a lot of that. Everybody's like, they saved
Well,
the day.
I would argue after
Yes.
Sokovia.
Yeah, well, yes, but that also, weirdly enough, we didn't even tell that full story because we were so focused on the infighting and everything else.
Yeah.
So it's like, we don't see that the same way we see that with mutants and the X-Men.
Yeah.
So I do have to say, like, I think in that case, I think right now the DODC is fighting a losing battle because people don't inherently look at enhanced individuals, at least right now, as threats because they've always been put on a pedestal, i.e. the Avengers, versus mutants. I mean, it writes itself.
Yeah. And not to mention, like, these enhanced individuals that the DODC is collecting, like, it's very possible a good portion of them are mutants. We have confirmed mutants in the MCU. I named them at the earlier in the episode.
Yeah.
So the other thing that could be interesting is I'm going to assume, because the DODC is, moral, not even ambiguity, they're just trashy morals. Like, the idea that they are doing tests on these folks, they're trying to understand where do these powers come from. They might be, is it Bruno is Kamala's friend? Like, he was the first person to say the M word, capital M, in the MCU and like do that testing. So if some kid who's like in middle or early high school can do it,
I think they were in high school. Give them some credit.
Well, she's like such a pure heart. It makes her seem younger. That's why. It's just like she's like,
I do think they're in high school. Yes,
she's so positive. You lose that as you get older. But anyway, if some kid in high school can like figure that out, why couldn't I know they don't have a lot of funding, but why couldn't a government entity be able to put that together? And then, if they're having more samples, they should be able to see a pattern, right? These might be the people who are isolating the X gene for all we know, and are going to be the first people to actually like talk about it when we get out of Secret Wars. That's entirely possible. So I say all that to say, like, there's a lot of possibilities still with the DODC, but I just don't think it's going to be in the form that have seen it to date. It's going to evolve, and to your point, like, the mutants are really the next. I mean, this pun is great, and I didn't mean to do it, but the mutants are the next natural step of evolution for the DODC.
They are.
I love it when wordplay just works. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I do agree. And I think coming out of this show, that's been my bigger thing, because I actually just don't really think where Simon and Trevor go right now is the bigger question, more than where the DODC go. I think that, because again, this show is so isolated in it of itself. But I also think just as a show, I really appreciated, I think I touched on it at the beginning, I really appreciated that it just focused on like a theme. And it didn't need to focus again on telling the hero's journey. We didn't do that whole thing. But it really showed this deeper theme of friendship and finding somebody who sees you for you. And I think we saw that starting in episode 3 with Trevor and Simon after the birthday party. And Trevor obviously witnesses his powers for the first time. But then Trevor makes the decision to do away with the wire. He's like, I will not be turning this in. I refuse to. This is a good guy who simply has spent most of his time alone because of these abilities, and he just wants a job. He just wants to make it big. That's his dream. And I think you see that continue to play out. And actually, something I really want to talk about is I love how they told the betrayal.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that, because we could have had the DODC show up and out Trevor for the sake that he, like, for everything he did, and we could have had stupid Agent Cleary be like and have that look on his face, and like we all know what we're talking about, because his like got ya face and like all that stuff. Like, I could just think of it so clearly because he just annoys me. But
if it makes you feel any better, I'm pretty sure he was in Succession. He was kind of a fart in Succession too. So like the actor's really good at making you hate him.
well, kudos. But I mean, we could have had that moment. It could have been something big. It could have been a big falling out. And instead, it actually based itself still in their friendship, because the reporter is asking questions, and at no point does the reporter ask anything that's like betrayal worthy. She's just like, what did you do because you didn't finish your sentence? And like, that's the deepest question she asked. She was like, what deal did you get? But you can tell because Simon knows Trevor.
Yeah.
And he is putting the pieces together as she's asking that. And then obviously Trevor storms off. And you can see Simon being like, oh my God, I was the deal. And
but also like the fact that like Trevor throughout this whole experience has been, oddly enough, the cool, calm, and collected one. He's the one that like when Simon's up here, he brings him back to level. When Simon's like spiraling on the other side, he brings him back to level. And you can see, to your point, in Simon's face when like Trevor has that like what seems to be extremely visceral reaction to a seemingly innocent question, that he's like, oh.
Yeah.
And you see it.
Yeah. Well, that's my point, is like, as a friend, as a close friend, he was like, this isn't normal. And we went into this whole interview thinking we were going to have a very, like, I thought this was going to be bad for me. Like, he's out here fighting for his life the entire day, trying to like seem like a nice guy. And like, then he even called him his ex-girlfriend. It was like, did you say anything mean about me? Like, I literally was like, dude, you're cute.
Can we just talk about the ex-girlfriend though for a second? The fact that she knew that whole time and never once pressured him about it, never once, I mean, I'm sure she wanted him to open up, but she never like used it as an ultimatum, essentially, I think is a better way to put it. She never was like, I know something about you, like blah, 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 blah. Like, she never used it against him. She just waited so patiently for him to open up. And when she realized he was never going to, it became very clear that she was not the person for him because he couldn't trust her. And that was just like, I think, very sad for him to realize that all this time he could have. All this time she was keeping his secret and he didn't even know.
Although I will say, like, I love that she just sat there and was like, we live together. Like, what you...
like, how sly do you think you were?
Yeah, like, as somebody who has lived with roommates and other individuals, like, just people, I'm like, yeah, you really can't hide all too much when you're living with somebody.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the other thing for me was I just was like, now that I'm looking back at this, and it didn't really, I guess, like, she's so briefly in the first episode, you don't think about it. I was like, my God, what made you even be like, I should live with her? If you have these abilities you've been trying to hide, clearly your family knows because you've had outbursts and stuff growing up. But like, you don't keep anybody close, which is obviously part of why they ended. I understand that. But at the same time, I was like, what part of you even went, one, I should get a girlfriend, and two, I should move in with my girlfriend. But I don't want to open up. I don't want to talk about my powers, and I must hide them. Like, I just don't really, now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, what was the thought process?
Well, I actually think that's sad because it's like, that was his like one attempt at connecting, and he just was so unable to do it because he'd literally never done it before. And so like, I think like, going back to episode 1 when she's leaving, like, it is a brief scene, but you just see like confusion on his face because he's like, what do you mean you don't know me? We've been dating, like, we live together, all this stuff. Like, for him, the idea of like truly opening up, like, he's never even explored like an entire portion of who he is. And he just thinks that like giving people 30 or 40%, like, they'll never notice. And so it doesn't even clock for him that like she can tell that there's more underneath, or never even entertains the idea that she knows. So it's actually sad that like he made that attempt, but he doesn't even understand why he fell short. And it's not until they have that conversation, and then he can compare his relationship to her with his relationship to Trevor and be like, oh, like, I see it now. Like, he sees all of me and I only gave you this portion. And when they're at that bar, the wheels in Simon's head are turning and you see him making those connections, which then is like, then you get to I believe it's the same episode, the end of the episode, and it's revealed, it is, because the reporter episode, it's
Yeah.
revealed that all this time Trevor, set this all up to spy on him, and poor Simon's just had this realization that Trevor's the only person who truly knows him.
Yeah.
And like that scene in the trailer, in Trevor's trailer, broke my heart. I was like hands on face.
Yeah. And it was so well done.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm glad that it happened in a way that it still showcased how close those two are.
Yeah.
Because again, we could have had somebody essentially say it or like expose him. And instead it was by knowledge of who this individual is, by spending so much time with him, by trusting him so much, that Simon was able to put together what truly happened. And obviously, we understand he felt that betrayal. But what I think was so wholesome to me is that Trevor was more willing to sacrifice himself, his career, his everything for Simon than anything else.
Yeah.
He did not even think twice. And honestly, I have to say, in episode 8, I did not think we were going to see him and Trevor together again. I thought that was going to be the end.
Yeah.
And I was really going to be sad because I was like, first off, I love this duo. But second, like, I mean, we've all had friendship breakups. So in and of itself, you're sitting there and you're like, dang, like, I feel for him because this was hard and he was betrayed. And then his best friend tried to do the right thing. And to be fair, from a viewer perspective, like, we've known Trevor's been trying to do the right thing since, like, not I guess episode 3, but even like from the jump, he was like, you told me to just do this. Now you're like blackmailing me into doing everything else. I didn't know this guy 2 days ago. Now I do. Now I'm starting to get to know him. I really like him.
Yeah.
Like, he's like,
they're kindred spirits.
Yes. And he didn't want to be involved like that anymore. And to be fair, yes, when he started this endeavor, he didn't know Simon. But as he got to know him, he really wanted to be a friend for him and to be a mentor even for him. And you could see that versus, and so like, I think that's all things that Simon obviously goes through in his head and like thinks about. And that's part of why to him, also the sacrifice play that is made by Trevor means so much as well. But like, I was so happy that we see him at the DODC breaking Trevor out because I was like, friendship. Like, I just was like, that, like, essentially this whole show in one word, friendship, and the power of friendship. And just like, I think it's also really powerful in its own way. And obviously I can't really speak to this, and by I can't speak to this, but to see two men have such a nice deep friendship where it's an emotional level of friendship. I mean, I think unfortunately as a society that's not always something that we get to see. So it was really nice. It was nice to see it. And I really am happy that they said, don't worry, they're a package deal. We refuse to let you end this show thinking they'll never see each other again. No, they are literally flying off into the sunset. Like, literally flying off.
They got their happy ever after.
Yes.
In their friendship paradise.
Yes, literally. Like, it was honestly so touching to me because it was nice to see. And it was nice to see them express these emotions to each other. And for Simon's character to open up in a way that, like, they made it clear he doesn't do that. That's not who he is. So I think there was just so much about this that I think it told a really powerful story.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of that too is like within their friendship, it shows that if you meet the right person, they can bring the best out in you. And that goes both ways. Like, Trevor really brought Simon out of his shell. I would have to think, and obviously we didn't really see this play out in the show, but hopefully we'll see Simon again. And when we do, I think we'll see a Simon who's more open to making connections with people. Is he going to necessarily share the superhero part of himself? No, but I think he'll be maybe better at understanding like there's more that he could be sharing, and that superhero part. And I think Trevor has a whole monologue on Von Kovac's patio about how like that isn't who you are. That is a small part of you. Like, you can keep that part to yourself because it does endanger your livelihood. And that's a logical choice. Like, nobody's going to fault you for that. But there's so much more to you that you're not sharing because you think it's wrapped up in this, superpower that you don't want. So I think Trevor was able to do that really well for Simon. And I hope we get to see that growth, play out in his future appearances. But I think for Trevor, Simon helped him really move past his past. He was
Yeah.
so haunted by so much, especially the Mandarin role. But then for him to flip that on his head and use it, and when he says, I need to take accountability, he spent so much time in the episodes really saying, like, I lost this role because XYZ stole it from me. And then you find out, no, dude, like, you were high and you weren't able to perform to the level you needed to. And he never really took that accountability for how his actions affected his career. And so you see him recognizing that, acknowledging it, using what turns out to be like his greatest shame, which is the Mandarin role, and uses it to help a friend. And so, like, that has to be so healing, I think, if you're Trevor, to turn something that was so bad for you into something good for someone else. And so I just think that they are so good at kind of healing those like jagged pieces for one another, and making them like putting each other in a better place to move forward positively in life. And I think that's, to what you were saying about the friendship being the theme of the show, I think that's what the best friendships do. And I think we're all kind of searching for those connections that allow us to do that and be our best selves, be our full selves. And then for two men, like you said, to be the ones who are portraying that when often that's not what's happening, I think that's even better.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why this show for me touched just my heart in a different way. And that's why I think, again, they didn't do the whole crazy superhero, whatever, but you don't need that all the time. Yeah. And I think you can, I think we had this conversation before, but art tells different stories for a lot of different reasons. And this show as a whole didn't need to tell the superhero story again. It decided to tell a different story. And I think it worked so well because it had this deeper theme that from day one. Like, I mean, I said yesterday, or well, in our last episode, but when we recorded yesterday, like, Trevor appears in the first episode. And there's not a single episode that man's not in. And that he's not sharing a good bit of that screen time with the exception of episode 8, obviously, because of what happened. But like, still, like, it's just a very, I know you didn't like that it was a palate cleanser, but to me, it was a nice palate cleanser. And it was something to really assess and look at and be able to look at, just not being like, oh my gosh, he beat the superhero.
I mean, look, going back to that palate cleanser comment, I look forward, no, you're laughing, but I do just want to get this out here. I look forward to rewatching this when I'm in a different mindset and being like, dang, I really like this show. Because I do think it is a very quality show. I think the themes are important, both from like a political level, like we talked about last episode, but also on like a personal, interpersonal level. I think it says a lot about human connection. It says a lot about going for the things that you want and just full steam ahead for your dreams, which I think is a lovely message as well. I just think I was not in the right headspace to receive that right now. And I genuinely, like, and I say this like full chest, am so excited to be like, let me go rewatch this at another time when I'm like ready to receive this and just enjoy the heck out of this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's totally fair. I probably wasn't necessarily, I was not, I should say, in that headspace, but I'm excited to just go back to binge. Just like watch it all the way through and really enjoy it for the pretty much 4-hour movie that it would have been. Like, I'm excited to just be able to watch it and kind of see it from the perspective of just all the way through how each piece truly lends itself to the next one.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the last thing I'll say is that I hope we see Simon and Trevor again. I hope they don't end up in like MCU purgatory. Like, please, let's find them. I mean,
I don't know. They pulled Trevor out of their butts for Shang-Chi. I think we're good.
That's true. Okay, so Shang-Chi came out, 2021? And
yes,
Iron Man 3 was in 2013. So that man waited 8 years.
Yeah.
And then he only had to wait 5. Well, really like 4.5 because it was like back half of 2021. So not too shabby. Like, Trevor's just out here like, call me when you need me and I'll be here. So I'm hopeful that is sooner rather than later. But yeah, I liked these characters a lot. I think it was great storytelling. So I'm excited to see kind of where they go from here.
Yeah, me too. All I care about is that they're together, and they are, and that's all that matters.
Friendship paradise, man. It's where we all want to be.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, that is a wrap on Wonder Man. We will be kind of hitting our regularly scheduled programming after this up until, I guess, Daredevil is going to be the next thing because that was the next thing they announced. So I don't think they're going to try to squeeze anything in between, but that's okay. So in the meantime, make sure that you're following on your podcast platform of choice. You can also check out our website, which has our calendar. So if you're ever confused about what's coming out, I try my very best to keep it updated, and it is updated right now, so you can see what's going on for the next couple of weeks on the website. And if you want to support the show, you can check out our Buy Me a Coffee below as well.
You guys can also follow us on all of our socials, which are linked in the show notes down below. And it's really for moments like this that are great because we make a lot of announcements and we talk about our new episodes and obviously Sister Scoops clips and all that. But we were doing episode by episode reactions, and it is fun to be able to kind of see our journey as we're watching the show. So definitely go ahead and give us a follow on one or all of those platforms so that you guys could keep up with us. And as always, Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.